The human mind is an intricate labyrinth, a universe of thoughts, emotions, and hidden mechanisms that shape our reality. When we delve into the psychology of men, we uncover layers of societal conditioning, evolutionary imperatives, and deeply ingrained fears that often go unacknowledged, even by men themselves. What we perceive on the surface is frequently a carefully constructed facade, beneath which lies a complex emotional landscape. Today, we're going to explore some of these often disturbing psychological facts about male psychology, peeling back the layers to understand the silent battles, the unexpressed longings, and the profound vulnerabilities that define a significant part of the male experience. Prepare to look beyond the stereotypes and into the hidden truths that govern how men think, feel, and interact with the world. 1. Men often hide emotional pain because they fear being seen as weak. From the earliest moments of their lives, boys are subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, conditioned to embody strength, resilience, and stoicism. The phrase, "boys don't cry," isn't merely an old adage. It's a foundational tenet woven into the fabric of many cultures, shaping the emotional landscape of men from infancy. This pervasive societal expectation instills a deep-seated fear. The fear that any display of emotional pain, be it sadness, fear, or even profound grief, will be perceived as a fundamental weakness, a chink in the armor of their masculinity. This isn't just about avoiding a momentary discomfort, it's about safeguarding their entire identity. A man's perceived strength is often intertwined with his ability to withstand adversity silently, to absorb blows without flinching, and to navigate emotional turmoil with an outward composure that belies the internal tempest. The act of hiding emotional pain becomes a survival mechanism, a way to maintain status, respect, and even a sense of self-worth in a world that often equates vulnerability with fragility. This fear of appearing weak isn't merely an external pressure. It becomes an internalized critic, a voice that chastises any inclination towards emotional expression. When a man experiences heartbreak, betrayal, or profound loss, his initial instinct might be to withdraw, to intellectualize his feelings, or even to transmute them into more acceptable masculine emotions like anger or frustration. Sadness, in particular, is often viewed as a dangerous emotion, one that could unravel the carefully constructed image of invulnerability. The consequences of this suppression are profound and far-reaching. Internally, it leads to a buildup of unaddressed emotional baggage, manifesting as chronic stress, anxiety, and depression that often goes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. The inability to process and articulate pain can create a profound sense of isolation, even when surrounded by loved ones. Men may find themselves unable to connect deeply with others because true connection often requires a degree of mutual vulnerability that they have been taught to avoid at all costs. The facade of strength, while offering a perceived shield against judgment, paradoxically becomes a barrier to genuine intimacy and understanding. The societal narrative that equates masculinity with emotional impermeability places an immense burden on men. They are expected to be the protectors, the providers, the unwavering pillars of strength, regardless of their own internal struggles. This expectation can lead to a profound sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by people, because the deepest parts of their suffering remain hidden. The constant vigilance required to maintain this emotional facade drains mental and emotional resources, leading to exhaustion and a diminished capacity for joy. Furthermore, this fear can extend to seeking professional help. The idea of admitting to a therapist that one is struggling emotionally can feel like a devastating admission of weakness, a failure to handle it on their own. This reluctance contributes significantly to higher rates of undiagnosed mental health issues and, tragically, higher rates of suicide among men. The silent suffering is a pervasive epidemic, masked by outward behaviors that appear strong, indifferent, or even aggressive. The profound irony is that the very act of hiding pain, intended to project strength, often leads to a deeper, more debilitating weakness, eroding their well-being from the inside out. This deep-seated societal programming teaches boys from a young age that their emotional expression is not safe or acceptable, isolating them from their own humanity and from genuine connection with others, leaving them to fight silent battles that often go unnoticed and unaddressed until it's too late. 2. Many men equate emotional expression with loss of respect. Building upon the foundation of fearing weakness, many men internalize the belief that expressing emotions, particularly those deemed vulnerable or soft, directly correlates with a diminution of respect. This isn't just about personal discomfort, it's about a perceived threat to their social standing, their authority, and their very identity within various social hierarchies. From the playground to the boardroom, and critically within intimate relationships, men are often taught that a calm, unruffled demeanor is a hallmark of competence and control. To show fear, sadness, or even overwhelming joy too openly can be interpreted as a lack of self-control, a sign that they are easily swayed, or worse, not fit for leadership or responsibility. This deeply ingrained cultural programming suggests that true masculine strength lies not in the capacity to feel deeply, but in the ability to suppress those feelings and project an image of unwavering composure. This psychological phenomenon is rooted in centuries of societal expectations where men were traditionally cast as providers, protectors, and decision-makers. In these roles, emotional displays, especially those perceived as feminine, could be seen as liabilities. A leader who cries, a father who expresses profound fear, or a husband who openly admits to feeling lost might, in certain contexts, be perceived as less capable of fulfilling his duties. This perception is often internalized to such an extent that men themselves become their harshest critics, judging their own emotional expressions through the lens of potential disrespect. The fear isn't just that others will disrespect them, but that they will lose self-respect by violating their own internal code of masculine conduct. This creates a powerful internal conflict. The natural human impulse to express and process emotions clashes with the learned imperative to maintain a stoic facade. In relationships, this dynamic can be particularly damaging. A man might withhold his true feelings from his partner, not because he doesn't trust her, but because he fears that revealing his vulnerabilities, his anxieties about work, his insecurities about their future, or his deep emotional wounds might make him appear less formidable, less man enough to shoulder the burdens of the relationship. He worries that by showing his pain, he might lose her admiration, her trust in his strength, or even her love. This fear of losing respect can manifest as emotional distance, a reluctance to engage in deep, emotionally open conversations, or even a tendency to deflect or minimize his own feelings when prompted. The consequence is a profound sense of emotional isolation, not only for the man, but also for his partner, who may feel shut out and unable to truly know him. She might interpret his stoicism as indifference or a lack of care, further widening the emotional chasm. Furthermore, this equation of emotional expression with loss of respect extends beyond romantic relationships to friendships and professional interactions. In male friendships, emotional vulnerability is often reserved for extreme circumstances, if at all, and is usually expressed indirectly through shared activities or humor rather than direct emotional disclosure. In professional settings, the pressure to maintain an image of unwavering competence is even stronger, making it nearly impossible for many men to admit to stress, burnout, or emotional struggles without fearing career repercussions or a loss of standing among colleagues. The cumulative effect of this constant suppression is an emotional landscape that is perpetually guarded, where genuine feelings are hidden beneath layers of defense mechanisms. Men learn to navigate the world with an emotional mask firmly in place, sacrificing authentic connection and internal peace for the perceived safety of respect and masculine validation. This constant performance is exhausting and ultimately detrimental to their mental health, preventing them from experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion and from forming the deep, authentic bonds that are essential for well-being. The unspoken tragedy is that while men strive to earn respect through emotional restraint, they often inadvertently sacrifice the very intimacy and understanding that could provide true strength and support. Furthermore, this equation of emotional expression with loss of respect extends beyond romantic relationships to friendships and professional interactions. In male friendships, emotional vulnerability is often reserved for extreme circumstances, if at all, and is usually expressed indirectly through shared activities or humor rather than direct emotional disclosure. In professional settings, the pressure to maintain an image of unwavering competence is even stronger, making it nearly impossible for many men to admit to stress, burnout, or emotional struggles without fearing career repercussions or a loss of standing among colleagues. The cumulative effect of this constant suppression is an emotional landscape that is perpetually guarded, where genuine feelings are hidden beneath layers of defense mechanisms. Men learn to navigate the world with an emotional mask firmly in place, sacrificing authentic connection and internal peace for the perceived safety of respect and masculine validation. This constant performance is exhausting and ultimately detrimental to their mental health, preventing them from experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion and from forming the deep, authentic bonds that are essential for well-being. The unspoken tragedy is that while men strive to earn respect through emotional restraint, they often inadvertently sacrifice the very intimacy and understanding that could provide true strength and support. Furthermore, this equation of emotional expression with loss of respect extends beyond romantic relationships to friendships and professional interactions. In male friendships, emotional vulnerability is often reserved for extreme circumstances, if at all, and is usually expressed indirectly through shared activities or humor rather than direct emotional disclosure. In professional settings, the pressure to maintain an image of unwavering competence is even stronger, making it nearly impossible for many men to admit to stress, burnout, or emotional struggles without fearing career repercussions or a loss of standing among colleagues. The cumulative effect of this constant suppression is an emotional landscape that is perpetually guarded, where genuine feelings are hidden beneath layers of defense mechanisms. Men learn to navigate the world with an emotional mask firmly in place, sacrificing authentic connection and internal peace, sacrificing respect and masculine validation. This constant performance is exhausting and ultimately detrimental to their mental health, preventing them from experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion and from forming the deep, authentic bonds that are essential for well-being. The unspoken tragedy is that while men strive to earn respect through emotional restraint, they often inadvertently sacrifice the very intimacy and understanding that could provide true strength and support. This observation might seem counterintuitive given the prevailing stereotypes of men as emotionally aloof or commitment-phobic. However, psychological research and anecdotal evidence often suggest a different reality, that men, perhaps surprisingly, can fall in love more quickly than women. The initial spark, the intense attraction, and the rapid development of deep feelings can often take root in men at an accelerated pace. This might be partly attributed to evolutionary factors, where the drive to find a mate and secure a bond could have been a more immediate imperative. Additionally, societal pressures on men to find a partner and settle down can create a readiness for attachment that, once triggered by a suitable connection, can quickly blossom into profound affection. When a man encounters someone who meets his criteria, whether consciously or subconsciously, the emotional machinery can engage quite swiftly, leading to a deep internal conviction that this person is the one. However, this rapid internal development of love is frequently contrasted with a significantly delayed outward expression of those feelings. While a man might be deeply in love, experiencing all the euphoria and intensity that comes with it, he may take a considerable amount of time to articulate those feelings verbally or through explicit romantic gestures. This delay is often a direct consequence of the psychological conditioning discussed previously. the fear of vulnerability, the concern about appearing weak, and the worry that expressing deep emotions might lead to a loss of respect or power within the relationship dynamic. Saying "I love you" is a profound act of vulnerability, an admission that one's emotional well-being is now intertwined with another person. For many men, this admission feels like laying down their emotional armor, exposing themselves to potential hurt, rejection, or even manipulation. The internal calculus often involves a careful assessment of risk. Is it safe to express this? Will it be reciprocated? What are the potential consequences if it's not? Consequently, men often express their burgeoning love through actions rather than words. They might become more protective, more attentive to their partner's needs, more consistent in their efforts to spend time together, or more focused on providing support and security. These actions, while genuine indicators of their growing affection, can sometimes be misinterpreted by partners who are looking for more explicit verbal affirmations. The woman might perceive his actions as kind gestures, but without the accompanying words, she might remain unsure of the depth of his feelings, leading to anxiety or doubt within the relationship. This disparity between internal feeling and external expression can create a frustrating dynamic where one partner is deeply committed but hesitant to vocalize it, while the other yearns for that verbal confirmation to feel secure. The delay in expressing love can also stem from a desire to be absolutely certain before making such a significant declaration. For men, commitment is often seen as a weighty responsibility, and the words "I love you" are intrinsically linked to that commitment. They may want to ensure the relationship is stable, that their feelings are truly enduring, and that they are ready for the implications of such a pronouncement before uttering those powerful words. This cautious approach, while understandable from their perspective, can feel like an eternity to a partner waiting for reassurance. The psychological burden of this internal struggle, loving deeply but holding back the expression, can be significant. It reflects a profound internal conflict between the natural human desire for connection and the learned caution against emotional exposure. Ultimately, this dynamic highlights a critical aspect of male psychology. The intensity of their internal emotional experience often remains hidden behind a carefully managed outward demeanor, making it challenging for others to gauge the true depth of their affections until much later in the relationship's trajectory.
4. Male loneliness is one of the strongest predictors of depression. Loneliness, a profound and distressing emotional state stemming from a perceived lack of social connection, is a universal human experience. However, for men, this pervasive feeling carries a particularly heavy psychological burden, emerging as one of the most potent and insidious predictors of depression. While women often have more readily available social networks and are culturally encouraged to nurture deep, emotionally expressive friendships, men frequently face significant barriers to forming and maintaining such connections. The societal conditioning that promotes stoicism, self-reliance, and emotional suppression actively discourages the very behaviors that foster intimate social bonds: vulnerability, open emotional sharing, and asking for help. Consequently, men find themselves increasingly isolated, even when surrounded by others, leading to a silent epidemic of male loneliness. This loneliness is not merely a transient feeling of solitude, it's a chronic state of emotional deprivation, a deep yearning for understanding and connection that remains unfulfilled. The traditional masculine ideal often dictates that men should be self-sufficient, capable of handling their problems independently. Admitting to loneliness or actively seeking emotional support can feel like a direct contradiction of this ideal, a confession of weakness that they have been conditioned to avoid at all costs. As a result, many suffer in silence, internalizing their feelings of isolation rather than reaching out. This internal battle exacerbates the problem, creating a vicious cycle where loneliness fuels a reluctance to seek connection, which in turn deepens the loneliness. The absence of genuine emotional intimacy, whether with partners, friends, or family, leaves a gaping void that significantly impacts mental well-being. The link between male loneliness and depression is profoundly strong because loneliness erodes a man's sense of purpose, belonging, and self-worth. When a man feels disconnected, ununderstood, and fundamentally alone, his cognitive processes can become distorted, leading to negative self-talk, feelings of hopelessness, and a pervasive sense of emptiness. The lack of social support means there are fewer external buffers against stress and adversity. Without confidants to share burdens, process emotions, or receive validation, men are left to grapple with their struggles in isolation. This can lead to rumination, anxiety, and a gradual descent into depressive states. The absence of meaningful connection also deprives men of the positive emotional experiences that come from shared laughter, mutual support, and a sense of community, further diminishing their overall mood and resilience. Furthermore, male loneliness often manifests differently than loneliness in women. It might not always present as sadness or overt emotional distress, but rather as irritability, anger, substance abuse, or a general disengagement from life. These external behaviors can further alienate others, perpetuating the cycle of isolation. The profound impact of loneliness on male mental health is a disturbing reality, contributing to higher rates of suicide among men, particularly in middle and older age groups. When a man feels that he has no one to turn to, no one who truly understands him, and no meaningful place in the social fabric, the weight of that isolation can become unbearable. Addressing male loneliness requires a fundamental shift in societal perceptions of masculinity, encouraging men to embrace vulnerability, seek connection, and challenge the outdated norms that compel them to suffer in silence. Recognizing loneliness as a critical public health issue for men is the first step towards mitigating its devastating impact on their mental health and overall quality of life. The silent epidemic of male loneliness is a stark reminder of the human cost of emotional suppression and the profound need for genuine connection. 5. Men often get emotionally attached through consistency, not intensity. In the realm of emotional attachment, there's a prevalent misconception that men are primarily drawn in by grand gestures, intense romantic experiences, or fleeting moments of passionate connection. While these elements can certainly play a role in initial attraction, the deeper, more enduring emotional attachment for men often blossoms not from sporadic bursts of intensity, but from the steady, reliable rhythm of consistency. It is the predictable presence, the continuous effort, the unwavering support, and the persistent demonstration of care over time that truly weaves a woman into the fabric of a man's emotional world. This psychological mechanism reflects a fundamental aspect of male psychology, where trust and security are built brick by brick through repeated positive interactions rather than being forged in a single fiery moment. For many men, consistency provides a sense of stability and predictability that is deeply comforting and emotionally grounding. In a world that can often feel chaotic and demanding, a relationship characterized by reliability offers a safe harbor. This means showing up when you say you will, following through on promises, offering steady emotional support, and maintaining a consistent level of attention and affection. It's the small, everyday acts of kindness, the regular check-ins, the dependable presence during both triumphs and tribulations that accumulate over time to form a powerful emotional bond. These consistent behaviors communicate a profound message: I am here for you, reliably and without condition. This message resonates deeply with a male psyche that often values security and predictability. Intensity, while exciting, can sometimes be perceived as fleeting or even overwhelming. A relationship built solely on passionate highs and dramatic lows might not offer the sense of long-term security that men unconsciously seek for deep attachment. They may enjoy the intensity, but it's the underlying current of consistent care that signals a relationship's potential for longevity and genuine partnership. Think of it like building a sturdy structure. A sudden, brilliant flash of lightning might illuminate it spectacularly, but it's the continuous, steady work of laying bricks one after another that creates its enduring strength.
For men, each consistent act of kindness, understanding, or shared experience adds another layer to their emotional investment, solidifying their feelings and deepening their attachment. This preference for consistency also ties into a man's innate desire for trust and reliability. In a world where emotional vulnerability can feel risky, knowing that a partner is consistently there, consistently supportive, and consistently caring provides the psychological safety net needed for deeper feelings to flourish. Without this foundation of consistency, even the most intense moments can feel ephemeral, failing to anchor the kind of profound emotional connection that leads to lasting love. Therefore, while grand romantic gestures might make a memorable impression, it's the quiet, steady drumbeat of consistent affection and reliable presence that truly captures a man's heart and fosters deep, unwavering emotional attachment over the long term. This understanding is crucial for anyone seeking to build a lasting and meaningful relationship with a man, recognizing that true emotional bonding is often a marathon, not a sprint, built on the steady foundation of dependable care and unwavering presence. 6. Many men confuse sexual desire with emotional bonding. This particular psychological fact highlights a significant area of potential misunderstanding and distress in male relationships. For many men, the powerful physiological and psychological experience of sexual desire can become deeply intertwined with and sometimes mistakenly identified as emotional bonding. This is not to say that sexual intimacy cannot be a profound expression of emotional connection. Indeed, for many it is. However, the distinction lies in the potential for confusion, where the intense feelings associated with physical attraction and sexual gratification are misread as the complex, multifaceted emotional intimacy that defines true bonding. This confusion can stem from a variety of factors, including biological drives, societal conditioning, and a lack of emotional literacy. From an evolutionary perspective, the drive for procreation is strong, and sexual attraction serves as a primary mechanism. For some men, this powerful biological imperative, coupled with the immediate gratification and dopamine release associated with sexual activity, can create a powerful, albeit sometimes superficial sense of connection. The physical act itself can be so potent that it momentarily mimics the feelings of deep intimacy and closeness, leading to a misattribution of these feelings to a profound emotional bond that may not yet exist or may never fully materialize. The intensity of the physical experience can overshadow the often slower, more nuanced development of genuine emotional rapport, shared values, and mutual understanding that are the hallmarks of true emotional bonding. Societal conditioning also plays a crucial role. Men are often socialized to view sexual conquest or physical intimacy as a measure of their masculinity, desirability, and success. In a culture that sometimes conflates sex with love, it's easy for men, especially those who may not have been taught to articulate or even identify complex emotions, to fall into the trap of believing that intense sexual activity automatically equates to a deep emotional connection. The absence of robust emotional education can leave men ill-equipped to differentiate between the thrill of physical intimacy and the profound satisfaction of authentic emotional attachment. They might genuinely believe they are emotionally bonded because they feel strong desire and enjoy physical closeness, without recognizing the deeper layers of empathy, vulnerability, and shared life experiences that constitute true emotional intimacy. The consequences of this confusion can be significant for both men and their partners. A man who confuses sexual desire with emotional bonding might push for physical intimacy in the mistaken belief that it will deepen the relationship, when in fact, without a foundation of genuine emotional connection, it might leave both parties feeling unfulfilled or even used. He might become deeply invested in a relationship primarily based on sexual attraction, only to realize later that the emotional depth he thought was present is largely absent, leading to disappointment and heartbreak. Conversely, his partner might feel confused or hurt if she perceives his pursuit of physical intimacy as a substitute for emotional connection, or if she realizes that his love is primarily driven by physical desire rather than a holistic appreciation of her as a person. This can lead to a breakdown in communication, unmet emotional needs, and ultimately the dissolution of relationships that were built on a misinterpretation of foundational feelings. Understanding this distinction is crucial for men to develop healthier relationships and for partners to navigate the complexities of male emotional expression. It highlights the need for greater emotional literacy and a more nuanced understanding of the different forms of connection that exist between individuals. 7. Men can stay in toxic relationships longer due to loyalty conditioning. The concept of loyalty is often deeply ingrained in male psychological conditioning, taught as a cardinal virtue from a young age. Men are frequently socialized to be steadfast, committed, and to stick it out through difficult times, whether in friendships, professional commitments, or romantic partnerships. While loyalty is undoubtedly a valuable trait, this conditioning can become a significant psychological burden, leading men to remain in toxic relationships far longer than is healthy or beneficial for them. The internal narrative often revolves around a sense of duty, responsibility, and a profound reluctance to abandon a partner, even when that partnership has become emotionally damaging, abusive, or fundamentally unfulfilling. This is not necessarily about a lack of awareness of the toxicity. It's often an overwhelming sense of obligation that overrides their own well-being. The roots of this loyalty conditioning can be traced to traditional masculine roles, where men were expected to be providers and protectors, unwavering in their commitment to their family unit. To leave a relationship, even a detrimental one, can be perceived as a failure of this fundamental duty, a betrayal of their role. This perception is often reinforced by societal expectations, family pressures, and even self-imposed ideals of what a good man should be. The idea of giving up or quitting can be deeply antithetical to their self-image, leading them to endure immense suffering in an attempt to uphold an ideal of unwavering commitment. The sunk cost fallacy also plays a significant role here. The more time, effort, and emotional investment a man has poured into a relationship, the harder it becomes to walk away, as doing so would feel like admitting that all that investment was for naught. Furthermore, men who have been conditioned to suppress their emotional pain, as discussed in earlier points, may struggle to articulate the extent of the toxicity they are experiencing. They might internalize the abuse or emotional neglect, rationalizing their partner's behavior or blaming themselves. The very act of admitting that a relationship is toxic and that they need to leave requires a level of emotional processing and self-advocacy that men are not equipped for, given their emotional conditioning. The fear of being seen as a quitter, a failure, or even a bad guy for ending a relationship can be immense, outweighing the immediate pain of staying. They might also hold on to the hope that things will improve, particularly if they have invested heavily in the relationship or if they believe it is their responsibility to fix the problems. The consequences of remaining in toxic relationships due to loyalty conditioning are severe. Men can experience prolonged emotional abuse, psychological manipulation, and a gradual erosion of their self-esteem and identity. Their mental and physical health can deteriorate, leading to chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. They may also become isolated from friends and family who recognize the toxicity but are powerless to intervene. The loyalty that was once a virtue transforms into a self-destructive trap, preventing them from seeking healthier, more fulfilling connections. Breaking free from such a relationship often requires an immense act of courage, a conscious defiance of ingrained conditioning, and a profound reevaluation of what true loyalty to oneself and one's well-being, truly means. It highlights a disturbing aspect of male psychology, where an admirable trait, when misapplied, can become a powerful impediment to personal happiness and emotional liberation.
8. Men fear rejection more intensely than they admit. Beneath the veneer of confidence, bravado, or indifference that many men present lies a profound and often unspoken fear of rejection. This fear is not merely a mild apprehension. For many, it is an intense, visceral dread that can significantly influence their behavior, decision-making, and willingness to pursue opportunities in various aspects of life, particularly in romantic and social contexts.
While society often expects men to be assertive, to take risks, and to pursue what they want relentlessly, the internal psychological reality is often fraught with anxiety about the potential sting of being turned down, dismissed, or deemed unworthy. This intense fear is rarely openly admitted, precisely because to do so would be to reveal a vulnerability that contradicts the masculine ideal of strength and resilience. The roots of this intense fear are multifaceted. From an evolutionary perspective, rejection could have carried significant survival implications, as social exclusion meant a loss of protection, resources, and reproductive opportunities. In modern society, while the stakes are not life or death, the psychological impact remains potent. Rejection can feel like a direct assault on a man's self-worth and identity. For men, whose self-esteem is often closely tied to their ability to succeed, to be desired, and to be competent, as we will explore further, rejection can be interpreted as a fundamental failure, a devastating blow to their sense of self. It confirms their deepest insecurities, that they are not good enough, not attractive enough, or not worthy of connection. The internal narrative can be brutal, leading to self-blame and a profound sense of inadequacy. This fear manifests in various ways. Many men might avoid initiating conversations with potential romantic partners, hesitate to ask someone out, or refrain from expressing their true feelings, even when deeply interested. The perceived risk of rejection outweighs the potential reward of connection. Instead, they might adopt a casual, detached demeanor, hoping to protect themselves by appearing uninterested. Or they might engage in indirect approaches, testing the waters without fully exposing their intentions. In friendships, the fear of rejection can prevent men from opening up emotionally, sharing vulnerabilities, or seeking support, as they worry that doing so might lead to ridicule or being pushed away. In professional settings, it can manifest as a reluctance to pitch ideas, ask for promotions, or take on challenging projects, fearing that failure or criticism will be perceived as a personal rejection of their capabilities. The internal experience of this fear is often highly distressing. The anticipation of rejection can trigger anxiety, self-doubt, and a paralysis that prevents action. When rejection does occur, it can lead to intense emotional pain, often internalized and processed in isolation, due to the societal pressure against expressing such vulnerability. This pain might manifest as anger, withdrawal, or a hardened exterior, further reinforcing the cycle of emotional suppression. The intense fear of rejection is a silent burden that many carry, profoundly influencing their social interactions and emotional landscape. It underscores the psychological cost of societal expectations that demand strength and invulnerability, while simultaneously denying men the space to acknowledge and process their very fears. Understanding this deep-seated fear is crucial for fostering empathy and encouraging environments where men feel safer to take emotional risks and pursue genuine connection without the overwhelming dread of being deemed insufficient. 9. A man's self-worth is often tied to his ability to provide. One of the most profound and pervasive psychological undercurrents shaping male identity is the deep connection between a man's self-worth and his ability to provide. This isn't merely about financial provision, though that is a significant component. It encompasses the broader capacity to offer resources, security, stability, and solutions, whether to his family, his partner, his community, or even his friends. For centuries, and in many cultures still today, the role of the male has been inextricably linked to his utility and his capacity to be a reliable source of sustenance and protection. This historical and societal conditioning has ingrained in many men a core belief that their value as individuals, their very essence of being a man, is directly proportional to their efficacy in fulfilling this provider role. This psychological linkage means that a man's sense of accomplishment, pride, and personal validation often hinges on his perceived success in providing. When he is able to secure resources, achieve professional milestones, or offer practical solutions to problems, his self-esteem receives a significant boost. Conversely, any perceived failure or inability to provide can strike at the very core of his identity, leading to feelings of inadequacy, shame, and profound self-doubt. Losing a job, experiencing financial hardship, or feeling unable to protect or support his loved ones can trigger an existential crisis for many men, far beyond the practical implications. It can feel like a fundamental failure of his masculinity, a questioning of their right to exist or their worthiness of love and respect. This intense pressure to provide is a heavy psychological burden. It can drive men to work excessively long hours, to take on jobs they dislike, or to suppress their own needs and desires in favor of fulfilling this perceived duty. The constant striving to maintain or improve their providing capacity can lead to chronic stress, burnout, and a diminished quality of life. In relationships, this dynamic can manifest as a man feeling immense pressure to be the primary breadwinner, even if his partner also works, or feeling inadequate if his partner earns more. He might equate his love for his family with his ability to give them material comfort, sometimes overlooking or struggling to provide emotional support if his energy is entirely consumed by the pursuit of resources. The modern world, with its fluctuating economies and changing gender roles, presents new challenges to this deeply ingrained psychological construct. As women increasingly achieve economic independence and shared responsibilities become more common, men may struggle to redefine their sense of worth beyond the traditional provider role. This can lead to identity confusion, anxiety, and a feeling of being unmoored if their primary source of self-validation is challenged. The disturbing aspect of this fact lies in its potential to create a narrow, conditional basis for self-worth. It means that a man's value can become contingent on external factors, his job, his income, his ability to fix things, rather than on his inherent qualities as a human being. This makes him vulnerable to external circumstances and can hinder the development of a more robust, internally derived sense of self-esteem. Understanding this profound connection is crucial to comprehending many of the silent struggles men face, particularly in times of economic uncertainty or personal challenge, as their very sense of self is often on the line.
10. Many men suppress feelings so long they forget how to express them. The cumulative effect of societal conditioning that discourages emotional expression, coupled with the pressure to appear strong and capable, often leads to a disturbing psychological phenomenon in men. They suppress their feelings for such extended periods that they eventually lose the ability to effectively identify, articulate, and process them. This isn't merely a reluctance to express, it becomes a genuine erosion of emotional literacy, an atrophy of the internal mechanisms necessary for healthy emotional navigation. Over years or even decades of pushing emotions down, compartmentalizing them, or converting them into more acceptable outlets like anger or stoicism, the direct pathway from internal feeling to conscious recognition and verbalization becomes obscured, if not entirely severed. Imagine a muscle that is never used. It weakens and eventually becomes difficult to activate. Similarly, the emotional muscles responsible for introspection, empathy, and emotional communication can wither from disuse. When a man is constantly told or implicitly understands that his sadness is weakness, his fear is unacceptable, or his vulnerability will lead to disrespect, he learns to silence these internal signals. Initially, this might be a conscious effort, but over time, it becomes an automatic, unconscious process. He stops checking in with his emotional state, stops trying to label what he feels, and eventually, the internal landscape becomes a murky, undifferentiated mass of discomfort rather than distinct emotions. He might know he feels bad, off, or stressed, but he struggles to pinpoint the underlying sadness, anxiety, or grief that is truly present. This emotional amnesia has profound consequences. In relationships, it creates a significant barrier to intimacy. A partner might plead for him to open up, to share what he's feeling, but he genuinely struggles to do so, not out of malice or unwillingness, but because he literally doesn't know how.
He might feel a surge of internal distress, but cannot translate it into words, leading to frustration for both himself and his partner. He might default to platitudes, dismissive statements, or even anger as a way to escape the pressure of emotional inquiry, further perpetuating the cycle of misunderstanding and emotional distance. The inability to express feelings also extends to positive emotions. While he might feel love or joy deeply, he may struggle to articulate it in a way that his partner can truly understand and appreciate, leading to feelings of being unloved or unappreciated. Furthermore, this suppression impacts a man's ability to cope with life's challenges. Without the capacity to process emotions effectively, significant life events like loss, failure, or trauma can become deeply destabilizing. Instead of being able to grieve, reflect, and learn, he might internalize the pain, leading to prolonged psychological distress, maladaptive coping mechanisms such as substance abuse or workaholism, and an increased risk of mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. The disturbing reality is that many men are walking through life emotionally blind, cut off from a vital part of their human experience, not by choice, but by years of reinforced suppression. Relearning how to feel and express emotions often requires significant therapeutic intervention and a conscious, arduous effort to dismantle years of ingrained habits, highlighting the immense psychological toll of a culture that discourages male emotionality. 11. Men are more likely to open up emotionally only during vulnerability triggers like illness, failure, or loss. The deeply ingrained habit of emotional suppression and the fear of showing weakness mean that for many men, genuine emotional openness is often a rare and carefully guarded phenomenon. However, there are specific, often intense circumstances that can act as vulnerability triggers, temporarily overriding these defenses and allowing a man to access and express their deeper emotional landscape. These triggers are typically situations that shatter the illusion of control, competence, and invulnerability, forcing a confrontation with their own limitations and humanity. Illness, significant failure, and profound loss are among the most potent of these catalysts. In these moments, the carefully constructed emotional walls often crumble, not out of choice, but out of necessity, as the sheer weight of the experience becomes too much to bear in silence. When a man faces a serious illness, his physical strength and autonomy are compromised. The body, once a reliable vessel of control and capability, becomes a source of pain and uncertainty. This physical vulnerability can often create a pathway for emotional vulnerability. The fear of death, the pain of suffering, and the realization of their own fragility can force men to confront their deepest anxieties and fears, leading them to open up to loved ones or medical professionals in ways they never would under normal circumstances. The immediate threat to their existence can make the fear of appearing weak seem trivial in comparison, allowing for a temporary suspension of their emotional guard. They might express fear, regret, or a deep longing for connection that has long been suppressed. Similarly, significant failure, whether in career, business, or a personal endeavor, can be a powerful trigger. For men whose self-worth is often tied to their ability to provide and succeed, a major failure can be devastating. It shatters their self-image as competent and capable, exposing a raw wound of inadequacy. In the aftermath of such a blow, the usual defenses might falter. The immense disappointment, shame, and frustration can overwhelm their capacity for stoicism, leading them to express their despair, their fears about the future, or their sense of personal failure to a trusted confidant. The weight of the failure becomes too heavy to carry alone, compelling a temporary break in their emotional suppression. Profound loss, such as the death of a loved one, the end of a long-term relationship, or the severing of a significant bond, is perhaps the most universally powerful vulnerability trigger. Grief is an emotion that is incredibly difficult to suppress entirely, and its intensity can force even the most emotionally guarded men to shed their defenses. In these moments, the societal pressure to be strong can feel insignificant compared to the overwhelming tide of grief, allowing for a rare glimpse into their deeper emotional pain. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon is that for many men, these extreme, often traumatic events are the only circumstances under which they feel permission or are simply unable to be emotionally vulnerable. It suggests that healthy, regular emotional expression is largely absent from their lives, replaced by a default state of suppression that only breaks under immense pressure. This means that consistent emotional intimacy and the benefits of proactive emotional processing are often missed, leading to prolonged suffering and an inability to truly connect with themselves and others until crisis strikes. It underscores the profound need for a cultural shift that allows men to embrace vulnerability as a strength, not just a last resort in times of distress. 12. Men often love silently, but break loudly. This psychological observation encapsulates a poignant and often tragic aspect of male emotional experience. On one hand, men are conditioned to love deeply, intensely, and with unwavering loyalty, yet they express this love through actions, silent devotion, and consistent presence, rather than effusive verbal declarations or overt emotional displays. Their love is a quiet undercurrent, a foundational commitment that permeates their behavior but rarely surfaces in explicit emotional terms. On the other hand, when these silent bonds are severed, when relationships collapse, or when profound emotional pain becomes unbearable, the break is often loud, dramatic, and devastating, manifesting in ways that can be shocking, self-destructive, or overtly aggressive. This stark contrast between silent love and loud breaking highlights the immense pressure cooker of suppressed emotions within male psychology. The silent love aspect ties into several previously discussed points: the fear of appearing weak, the equating of emotional expression with loss of respect, and the tendency to show affection through actions. A man might devote himself entirely to his partner, providing support, working tirelessly for their shared future, protecting them, and being a constant, reliable presence. These are his declarations of love, his profound commitment, but they are often conveyed without a stream of I love yous or deep emotional vulnerability. He might genuinely feel immense love, but his conditioning teaches him to embody it, not necessarily to articulate it. This can lead to his partner feeling unsure of his feelings, even as he is deeply, silently devoted. His love is a steadfast anchor, but one whose depth is rarely measured by words. However, when this silent love, this profound emotional investment, is shattered through a breakup, divorce, betrayal, or any significant loss, the consequences can be catastrophic precisely because the emotions have been so deeply suppressed. The pain, grief, and sense of loss, which would ideally be processed gradually and openly, instead erupt from a reservoir that has been sealed for years. This breaking loudly can manifest in various disturbing ways: sudden outbursts of anger or aggression, severe depression, substance abuse, reckless behavior, withdrawal into extreme isolation, or, tragically, suicidal ideation. The man who seemed stoic and composed throughout the relationship can become unrecognizable in the throes of heartbreak, precisely because he lacks the internal tools and external support systems to process such overwhelming pain in a healthy manner. The loud break is often a release of not just the immediate pain of the loss, but also the cumulative weight of years of unexpressed emotions, anxieties, and vulnerabilities that were never given an outlet. The facade of strength crumbles, revealing the raw, unaddressed emotional wounds beneath. This phenomenon is particularly disturbing because it often catches loved ones by surprise. They might have perceived the man as emotionally robust, only to witness him completely unravel when faced with a major emotional trauma. It underscores the immense psychological toll of emotional suppression, demonstrating that emotions do not simply disappear when ignored. They fester and build, only to explode with devastating force when the dam finally breaks. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for recognizing the silent suffering men endure and for advocating for environments that encourage healthier emotional expression, preventing these silent loves from leading to such profoundly loud and destructive breaks. 13. Men can be loyal to someone they're no longer in love with. This psychological reality is a complex and often painful paradox that speaks volumes about male conditioning, duty, and the intricate nature of human relationships. While love is typically understood as the primary glue that binds romantic partnerships, for many men, loyalty can operate as a powerful, independent force, compelling them to remain committed to a partner even when the emotional flame of love has significantly dimmed or completely extinguished. This isn't about deception or malice. It's often rooted in a deep-seated sense of obligation, responsibility, and the profound discomfort with the idea of giving up or abandoning a person they've invested in. The loyalty conditioning discussed earlier plays a crucial role here. Men are often taught that commitment is paramount, that they should be steadfast and reliable, particularly in the context of a long-term relationship or marriage. To walk away, even from a relationship devoid of romantic love, can feel like a profound failure of character, a betrayal of their masculine duty. This feeling is often exacerbated if there are children involved, financial entanglements, or shared life goals. The idea of disrupting a family unit, causing pain to their partner, or dismantling a life they've painfully built together can feel unbearable, even if staying means living in an emotionally unfulfilling state. The perceived cost of leaving, both emotionally and practically, can seem far greater than the cost of staying, even if the latter means sacrificing their own happiness. Furthermore, men might also confuse loyalty with love, especially if their emotional literacy is underdeveloped. They might interpret their consistent presence, their efforts to maintain the household, or their protective instincts as continued love, even when the passionate, romantic feelings have waned. They might care deeply for their partner as a person, value the partnership, and feel immense respect, but the specific spark of romantic love may have died out, leaving them in a state of quiet resignation. They might care deeply for their partner, value the partnership, and feel immense respect, but the specific spark of romantic love may have died out, leaving them in a state of quiet resignation. The consequences of this phenomenon are significant for all involved. For the man, it can lead to a life of quiet desperation, emotional stagnation, and a profound sense of unfulfillment. He might feel trapped, unable to pursue genuine happiness or a more compatible connection, all while upholding an ideal of loyalty that ultimately harms him. This can manifest as chronic unhappiness, withdrawal, or even passive-aggressive behaviors, as the unspoken resentment of his emotional compromise festers. For the partner, it can lead to a relationship where she feels loved and secure, unaware that the romantic core of the relationship has eroded for her male partner. This can lead to a painful revelation if the truth eventually surfaces, or a gradual erosion of intimacy as the lack of genuine romantic passion creates an unspoken void. This disturbing psychological fact highlights the heavy burden of duty and conditioning that men carry, often prioritizing perceived loyalty over their own emotional well-being and the authentic health of their relationships, leading to situations where commitment endures long after love has faded. 14. Men attach stronger to the woman who understands their silence. In a world where men are often conditioned to suppress their emotions and communicate indirectly, the woman who possesses the rare gift of understanding their silence becomes an anchor of profound emotional attachment. This isn't just about tolerating quietness. It's about a deep, intuitive comprehension that penetrates the unspoken, recognizing the emotional currents flowing beneath the surface of his stoic demeanor. For a man who has spent a lifetime guarding his inner world, the presence of a woman who can discern his feelings without him having to articulate them explicitly is an unparalleled source of comfort, validation, and emotional safety. It creates a bond that transcends words, forging a connection on a level that few others can reach. Consider the immense psychological relief this provides. A man who fears being seen as weak or losing respect if he expresses his pain or vulnerability finds solace in a partner who doesn't demand verbal explanations for his moods. When he withdraws into himself, perhaps wrestling with stress, anxiety, or sadness, the woman who understands his silence doesn't bombard him with questions or pressure him to talk about it. Instead, she might offer a quiet presence, a knowing glance, or a subtle gesture of support that communicates, "I see you, I understand you're going through something, and I'm here." This nonverbal affirmation is incredibly powerful because it validates his emotional experience without forcing him into the uncomfortable and often terrifying act of explicit emotional disclosure. It tells him he is accepted, even in his moments of unspoken struggle. This understanding of silence is often perceived by men as a profound form of empathy and acceptance. It signifies that he doesn't have to perform, doesn't have to put on a brave face, and doesn't have to translate his complex internal landscape into words that he may not even possess. This creates a rare space of psychological safety where he can truly be himself, even his most vulnerable self, without the fear of judgment or the pressure to conform to masculine ideals of emotional invulnerability. The woman who understands his silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where his guarded heart can finally find respite. This deep sense of being seen and accepted for who he truly is, beyond the performance of masculinity, fosters an incredibly strong and enduring emotional attachment. The disturbing aspect, perhaps, is that this profound attachment often arises from a place of emotional deprivation. It highlights the pervasive difficulty men face in expressing their feelings, making the rare individual who can intuitively bridge that gap almost indispensable. It underscores how much men yearn for this kind of understanding, precisely because it is so rarely encountered in their lives. This woman becomes the exception to a lifetime of being misunderstood or being forced to suppress. Her ability to navigate his unspoken world allows for a depth of connection that verbal communication alone might never achieve, forging a bond so powerful that it can become the bedrock of his emotional life. For a man, finding a woman who understands his silence is akin to finding a translator for his soul, and that connection is often cherished with unparalleled intensity and loyalty. 15. Men often develop crushes on women who show them basic kindness. This psychological insight reveals a poignant and often overlooked aspect of male emotional vulnerability, the profound impact of simple, genuine kindness. In a society that frequently conditions men to be strong, self-reliant, and emotionally stoic, genuine kindness, especially from a woman, can be a surprisingly rare and deeply affecting experience. Many men are accustomed to interactions that are transactional, competitive, or emotionally neutral. When a woman extends basic kindness, a warm smile, a thoughtful question, a moment of genuine concern, an unexpected compliment, or even just a patient ear, it can cut through the noise and resonate deeply, often sparking an immediate and intense emotional response that can quickly evolve into a crush. The reason for this lies in the context of male emotional experience. As we've discussed, men often operate under a heavy emotional burden, constantly guarding their vulnerabilities and struggling with feelings of isolation. They may encounter women who are physically attractive, intelligent, or successful, but these qualities, while appealing, don't necessarily address the deeper emotional needs that often go unmet. Kindness, however, speaks directly to a primal human longing for connection, acceptance, and warmth. For a man who might unconsciously feel pressured to always be on or to prove his worth, receiving unconditional kindness can feel like a profound relief, a momentary reprieve from the constant performance. It tells him, often implicitly, that he is seen, valued, and cared for, not for what he can do or provide, but simply for being himself. This act of kindness can trigger a powerful emotional response because it taps into an often starved emotional well. When a woman shows genuine interest in his well-being, offers a word of encouragement, or simply treats him with gentle respect, it can feel like a rare and precious gift. This unexpected warmth can quickly create a sense of safety and comfort, making him feel seen and appreciated in a way he might not regularly experience. The emotional vacuum created by years of suppressed feelings and indirect communication makes him highly susceptible to the profound impact of straightforward, empathetic gestures. What might seem like a small act to the woman can feel like a significant emotional offering.
The disturbing aspect here is the implication of how emotionally underserved many men are. The fact that basic kindness can be such a potent trigger for developing deep feelings suggests a widespread emotional hunger. It highlights that many men may not regularly receive unconditional warmth, empathy, or non-transactional care in their daily lives. This makes them profoundly receptive to any genuine expression of human connection that isn't tied to performance or expectation. A woman who offers kindness is not just being nice, she is, often unknowingly, fulfilling a deep emotional need that has been neglected. This can lead to a quick and intense emotional attachment as the man projects onto her the potential for sustained emotional nourishment and understanding, solidifying a crush that is born not just of attraction, but of a profound longing for genuine human warmth and acceptance. 1. Men get emotionally devastated by breakups months later than women. The aftermath of a breakup often follows a different emotional timeline for men compared to women, a phenomenon that can be deeply confusing and distressing for both parties. While women typically experience the initial shock and intense emotional pain of a breakup more immediately, often processing their grief and sadness in the weeks and months following the separation, men frequently exhibit a delayed emotional response. On the surface, a man might appear to be coping well, even thriving, shortly after a breakup. He might immerse himself in work, hobbies, or new social activities, projecting an image of resilience and moving on. However, this apparent composure often masks a deeper, unaddressed emotional turmoil that tends to erupt months down the line, long after his ex-partner and their mutual friends might assume he is fully recovered. This delayed devastation is rooted in several intertwined psychological factors. Firstly, the societal conditioning for men to suppress emotions and appear strong plays a significant role. In the immediate aftermath of a breakup, a man might feel immense pressure to man up, to avoid showing weakness, and to prove that he can handle the pain independently. He might actively resist acknowledging the full extent of his grief, channeling his energy into distractions or outwardly productive activities as a coping mechanism. This suppression is a defensive strategy, an attempt to protect his ego and maintain a facade of control, even if his internal world is crumbling. He might genuinely believe that by ignoring the pain, it will eventually dissipate. Secondly, men often process emotions in a more intellectualized manner. While women are often encouraged to talk through their feelings, seek social support, and engage in emotional expression as a form of healing, men are less likely to do so. They might ruminate internally, analyzing the breakup from a logical perspective, trying to find fault or understand the mechanics of what went wrong, rather than fully engaging with the emotional pain. This intellectual processing can delay the confrontation with raw grief. It's only when these distractions and intellectualizations begin to wear thin and the reality of the loss truly sets in that the full emotional weight crashes down. This can happen weeks, months, or even a year after the initial separation, often when he is no longer surrounded by the immediate sympathy or attention that might have initially served as a buffer. Thirdly, the delayed impact is often compounded by the realization of profound loneliness and the loss of the foundational stability the relationship provided. For many men, their romantic partner is often their primary source of emotional intimacy and support, given their difficulties in forming deep emotional connections with male friends. When that primary source is removed, the void becomes increasingly apparent over time. The initial flurry of activity or new experiences eventually fades, leaving him to confront the emptiness and the absence of the deep connection he had, however silently, relied upon.
This delayed confrontation with loneliness, coupled with the cumulative effect of suppressed grief, leads to a period of intense emotional devastation, manifesting as profound sadness, depression, anger, or even a crisis of identity. This disturbing timeline highlights the significant psychological cost of emotional suppression, where the immediate appearance of strength gives way to a delayed, often more isolating, period of profound emotional pain. 17. Men stay in situationships hoping they eventually turn into relationships. The situationship, a nebulous arrangement lacking clear definition or commitment, is a source of anxiety and frustration for many, but for men, it often carries a particular psychological weight, the persistent hope that it will eventually devolve into a committed, defined relationship. While both genders can find themselves in these ambiguous dynamics, men frequently exhibit a remarkable tenacity in clinging to situationships, driven by a combination of factors, including a desire for stability, a fear of starting over, and the difficulty in articulating their needs or setting boundaries. This hope, often against mounting evidence, can lead to prolonged emotional investment in an arrangement that ultimately fails to meet their desire for genuine partnership. One key reason for this tenacity is the male tendency to value consistency and stability, as discussed earlier. Even an ill-defined connection provides a degree of predictability and companionship that can be preferable to the uncertainty and effort of seeking a new relationship. For a man who might struggle with loneliness or finding new connections, a situationship, however flawed, offers a perceived emotional anchor. It's a known quantity, a familiar interaction, and for many, that familiarity feels safer than the daunting prospect of re-entering the dating world and facing potential rejection anew. Furthermore, men often invest emotionally in relationships through actions and effort, even if the label isn't there. He might be providing emotional support, spending significant time, or even offering practical help, all of which are genuine expressions of his growing attachment. Because his self-worth can be tied to his ability to provide and be useful, he might feel that his efforts are building towards a future, even if the other person hasn't explicitly agreed to it. Each act of investment reinforces his hope, making it harder to disengage. He might believe that if he continues to prove his value and commitment through his actions, the other person will eventually recognize his worth and reciprocate with a formal commitment.
The fear of loss and the fear of starting over also play a significant role. Ending a situationship, even an unsatisfying one, means confronting the pain of loss and the arduous process of finding a new connection. For men who struggle with emotional expression and vulnerability, this prospect can be daunting. The hope that the current, albeit flawed, connection will eventually solidify feels less threatening than the emotional labor required to move on. He might also be operating under the belief that if he walks away, he might miss out on the potential for the relationship to finally materialize. This psychological pattern highlights a disturbing vulnerability. Men can become trapped in unfulfilling dynamics, silently holding on to hope, sacrificing their own emotional needs for the elusive promise of a future that may never arrive. This prolonged engagement in ambiguity underscores the internal struggle between a deep desire for commitment and the psychological barriers that prevent men from asserting their needs or walking away from emotionally unsatisfying arrangements. 18. Men show affection through actions more than words. This psychological truth is a cornerstone of understanding male emotional expression and is often a source of both comfort and frustration in relationships. For many men, the primary language of affection is not spoken, but enacted. Their love, care, and devotion are conveyed through a consistent pattern of behaviors, gestures, and practical support, rather than through frequent verbal declarations or elaborate emotional displays. This preference for action-oriented affection is deeply rooted in societal conditioning, traditional gender roles, and the innate male tendency to solve problems and provide tangible solutions. From a young age, boys are often taught the value of being useful, capable, and reliable. Their worth is frequently tied to what they can do rather than what they can say.
This translates into how they express love and care. A man might show his affection by fixing something around the house, ensuring his partner's car is safe, working diligently to provide financial security, running errands, listening patiently without interruption, even if he doesn't offer many words in return, or simply being a dependable presence in times of need. These actions, in his mind, are powerful declarations of love and commitment. They communicate, "I care about your well-being, I am here for you, and I am actively working to make your life better." This action-oriented approach to affection can sometimes create a communication gap in relationships, particularly with partners who primarily interpret love through verbal affirmations or overt emotional displays. A woman might yearn to hear "I love you" more often, or to receive more emotional reassurance, while her male partner might be diligently demonstrating his love through a multitude of practical efforts, unaware that his messages are not being fully received or understood in the way he intends. He might feel frustrated that his efforts are not recognized as expressions of love, while she feels emotionally unfulfilled due to a perceived lack of verbal intimacy. The psychological implication here is that men often derive satisfaction from providing and protecting, and these acts become intrinsic to their expression of affection. When he takes care of a problem, he feels he is demonstrating his love and his role as a capable partner. This isn't a deliberate withholding of words, it's often his most natural and comfortable way of communicating deep feelings. Asking him to verbalize his emotions more frequently can feel unnatural, difficult, or even vulnerable, as it goes against years of ingrained conditioning. It requires him to step outside his comfort zone and engage in a form of emotional expression that he may not have been taught or encouraged to develop. Understanding this distinction is crucial for fostering healthier relationships. It encourages partners to read male affection through their actions, recognizing the profound love and care embedded in their practical efforts and consistent support. Simultaneously, it highlights the need for men to consciously bridge this communication gap, perhaps by learning to occasionally verbalize their feelings, even if it feels challenging, to ensure their heartfelt affections are fully understood and appreciated by their partners. The quiet strength and dependable actions of a man are often his deepest declarations of love, even if they are rarely accompanied by a flourish of words. 19. Men often prioritize others' comfort over their own emotional needs. This psychological tendency is a profound and often self-sacrificing aspect of male behavior, deeply rooted in societal expectations of masculinity. Many men are conditioned to see themselves as providers of comfort, stability, and problem solvers for others, particularly for their loved ones. This role often comes with an unspoken mandate to suppress their own emotional discomfort or needs if doing so ensures the well-being, happiness, or comfort of those around them. The prioritization of others' comfort becomes a core component of their identity and a metric of their perceived success as a man, leading to a disturbing pattern of self-neglect and internalized suffering. The origins of this behavior lie in the traditional masculine ideal of selflessness and sacrifice. Men are often taught that a real man puts others first, particularly his family. This can manifest in various ways. A man might absorb stress from work to prevent it from affecting his family, he might agree to plans he doesn't enjoy to keep his partner happy, or he might internalize emotional pain rather than burdening others with his struggles. The underlying belief is that his emotional needs are secondary or even irrelevant compared to the needs of those he cares for. To express his own discomfort, sadness, or unmet needs might feel selfish, weak, or like a failure to adequately support his loved ones. This prioritization is often driven by a desire to maintain harmony and protect others from perceived distress. A man might believe that if he expresses his own emotional struggles, it will cause worry, anxiety, or sadness in his partner, which he instinctively wants to prevent. He sees himself as a shield, absorbing the emotional blows so that others don't have to. This noble intention, however, often leads to him becoming an emotional pressure cooker, with his own needs going unaddressed and his emotional health deteriorating in silence. He might become adept at putting on a brave face, smiling through his pain, and projecting an image of contentment, even when he is deeply struggling internally.
The consequences of this self-neglect are significant. Over time, the constant suppression of his own emotional needs can lead to burnout, resentment, and a profound sense of emotional emptiness. He might find himself unable to articulate what he needs or wants because he has spent so long prioritizing others that he has lost touch with his own internal landscape. This can lead to a gradual erosion of his sense of self and an increased risk of mental health issues like depression and anxiety. In relationships, while his partner might initially appreciate his selflessness, the lack of genuine emotional exchange can eventually create distance, as she may feel unable to truly know him or connect with his deeper self. The disturbing aspect of this tendency is the inherent self-sacrifice that often goes unnoticed and unacknowledged. Men silently bear immense emotional burdens, believing it is their duty to do so, ultimately compromising their own well-being in the service of others' comfort, highlighting the profound and often tragic cost of deeply ingrained masculine conditioning. 20. Men fall for women who admire them, not ones they have to impress. This psychological fact cuts to the core of male self-worth and the dynamics of attraction, revealing a subtle yet powerful preference in how men form deep emotional connections. While men are often depicted as pursuing women they find challenging or those they feel they need to win over, the reality for deep, lasting affection is often quite different. Men are profoundly drawn to and fall in love with women who genuinely admire them. This isn't about superficial flattery or ego-stroking. It's about authentic appreciation for their character, their efforts, their achievements, and their unique qualities. The woman who truly sees and values a man for who he is and expresses that admiration taps into a fundamental male psychological need that transcends mere physical attraction. The reason for this lies in the pervasive male experience of needing to prove themselves. From a young age, men are often conditioned to earn respect, to achieve, to provide, and to demonstrate competence. Their self-worth, as discussed earlier, is frequently tied to their utility and success. In this context, constantly having to impress someone, to perform, to validate their worth, can be emotionally exhausting and ultimately unfulfilling. It perpetuates the cycle of external validation, never allowing them to feel truly accepted for their inherent self. When a man encounters a woman who genuinely admires him, it provides a profound sense of relief and validation. It tells him that he doesn't have to constantly strive or perform. He is already enough. This admiration acts as a powerful affirmation of his identity and competence, which are critical components of his self-esteem. When a woman expresses appreciation for his intelligence, his strength, his kindness, his humor, or his unique talents, it resonates deeply. It makes him feel seen, respected, and valued in a way that is profoundly comforting and attractive. This feeling of being truly understood and appreciated creates a safe emotional space where he can let down his guard. The woman who admires him doesn't make him feel like he's constantly under scrutiny. Instead, she makes him feel capable, worthy, and secure. This sense of security is a powerful foundation for emotional attachment. The disturbing aspect here is that this preference highlights the underlying insecurity that men often carry. The need for admiration, for external validation of their worth, suggests a fragile self-esteem often built on conditional achievements rather than unconditional self-acceptance. It underscores the immense pressure men feel to be impressive and the relief they find when they don't have to be. The woman who admires him becomes a source of emotional nourishment, a balm to the constant pressure to perform. This isn't about a desire for a submissive partner, but for a partner who genuinely sees his strengths and celebrates them, allowing him to feel confident and secure in his own skin. This dynamic reveals how deeply men yearn for recognition and how powerful a force authentic admiration can be in forging a lasting emotional bond. 21. Men experience heartbreak as a threat to identity, not just emotions.
For anyone, heartbreak is a profoundly painful experience, a shattering of emotional bonds and future dreams. However, for men, the experience of heartbreak often extends beyond mere emotional pain. It can be perceived as a fundamental threat to their very identity. This isn't simply about the loss of a loved one or the sting of rejection, it's about the unraveling of who they are, their sense of purpose, their capabilities, and their place in the world. Because a man's self-worth is often deeply intertwined with his ability to provide, protect, and succeed in relationships, the failure of a significant relationship can feel like a catastrophic failure of his entire being. Consider the various ways a man's identity can be tied to a relationship. He might define himself as a loving partner, a devoted husband, a strong protector, or a reliable provider within the context of that partnership. The relationship becomes a core pillar of his self-concept. When the relationship ends, particularly if he is left or feels he failed to prevent its demise, these pillars crumble. It's not just, I lost her, it's, I failed as a partner, I am no longer a husband, I am not capable of sustaining a relationship, or my ability to provide happiness was insufficient. This internal narrative transforms the emotional pain into an existential crisis, where his entire self-perception is called into question. The societal conditioning that expects men to be strong, resilient, and in control further exacerbates this. Heartbreak, particularly if it involves being left, can feel like a profound public and private humiliation, a stark demonstration of his lack of control over his life and emotions. This can trigger intense shame and anger, which often mask the deeper pain. And identity crisis. He might struggle to reconcile the image of himself as a competent, desirable man with the reality of being rejected or abandoned. This dissonance can be incredibly destabilizing, leading to a profound sense of confusion about who he is without the relationship that helped define him.
Furthermore, for many men, their romantic partner is often their primary source of emotional intimacy and validation. When this source is suddenly removed, it leaves a gaping void not just in his emotional life, but also in his sense of self-support. He might lack the broader social networks or emotional tools to process such a deep identity threat, leading to prolonged suffering. This can manifest as a desperate attempt to regain control through reckless behavior, an intense focus on work or new conquests to reestablish his worth, or a profound withdrawal and depression. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon is the depth of the wound. Heartbreak for men is often not just about a broken heart. It's about a shattered self, a fundamental challenge to their very essence and purpose. It underscores the fragility of a male identity often built on external validations and the devastating impact when those external structures collapse, leaving them to grapple with not just loss, but a profound crisis of who they are. 22. Many men fear commitment because they fear failure, not love. The stereotype of the commitment-phobic man is pervasive, often attributed to a fear of losing freedom, a desire for novelty, or an inability to settle down. However, a deeper psychological truth reveals that for many men, the reluctance to commit stems not from a fear of love itself, but from a profound and often unspoken fear of failure within the commitment. Given that a man's self-worth is heavily tied to his ability to provide, succeed, and be a reliable partner, the prospect of entering a long-term, binding commitment can trigger intense anxiety about his capacity to meet the expectations associated with it. The fear isn't of the emotional connection, it's of falling short, of not being man enough to fulfill the duties and responsibilities that commitment entails. Consider the weight of societal expectations placed upon a man in a committed relationship, particularly marriage. He is expected to be a stable provider, a protective figure, a supportive partner, and potentially a good father. These are immense responsibilities, and for a man who has been conditioned to strive for competence and avoid failure at all costs, the thought of committing to a role where failure carries such high stakes can be terrifying. He might worry about his financial stability, his ability to maintain emotional equilibrium, his capacity to be consistently loving and present,
or his potential to navigate the inevitable challenges that arise in a long-term partnership. The fear is not that he won't love his partner, but that he won't be able to adequately perform as a committed partner, thereby failing both her and himself. This fear of failure is exacerbated by the male tendency to internalize setbacks and view them as personal deficiencies. If a previous relationship ended, he might view it as his personal failure, making him hesitant to enter another commitment where the risk of repeating that failure looms large. The pressure to get it right can be paralyzing. He might also be acutely aware of the potential consequences of failure, the emotional pain of a breakup, the financial burden of divorce, the disappointment of loved ones, and the profound blow to his self-esteem. These perceived risks make commitment feel like a high-stakes gamble, and his fear of losing, of failing, can override his desire for the deep connection that commitment offers. Therefore, his hesitation isn't necessarily a sign of a lack of love or affection for his partner. He might love her deeply, but the internal battle against the fear of not being able to sustain that love, to uphold his end of the commitment, is what holds him back. He might subconsciously believe that by avoiding formal commitment, he avoids the ultimate test of his masculine capabilities, thereby protecting his fragile sense of self-worth. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon is that it prevents many men from fully embracing the very relationships they desire, trapping them in a state of perpetual hesitation. It highlights the heavy burden of performance and the deep-seated fear of inadequacy that can overshadow genuine emotional connection, making commitment a daunting challenge rooted in a fear of self-perceived failure rather than an aversion to love itself. 23. Men can be emotionally attached after just one meaningful conversation. This psychological fact might seem surprising, particularly given the stereotype of men as emotionally guarded and slow to open up. However, it speaks to a profound and often unmet longing for genuine emotional connection and understanding that many men experience. For a man who has been conditioned to suppress his feelings and communicate indirectly, a single, truly meaningful conversation, one characterized by active listening, deep empathy, and a safe space for vulnerability, can be so rare and impactful that it can forge an immediate and powerful emotional attachment. It's not about the quantity of interactions, but the quality, the depth, and the emotional resonance of that singular exchange. Imagine a man who rarely feels truly seen or understood. His daily interactions might be superficial, transactional, or focused on practical matters. He might carry unspoken burdens, anxieties, or dreams that he feels unable to share due to the fear of judgment or appearing weak. When he enters someone, particularly a woman, who creates an environment where he feels safe enough to share a glimpse of his inner world, and who responds with genuine empathy and understanding, the effect can be electrifying. This isn't just a pleasant chat, it's a moment of profound emotional validation, a rare experience of being truly heard and accepted. This single conversation can act as a powerful emotional trigger. It breaks through the layers of emotional armor he has meticulously constructed over years, offering a taste of the deep connection he unconsciously craves. The woman who facilitates such a conversation becomes in that moment a beacon of emotional safety and understanding. He might project onto her the potential for sustained emotional intimacy, instantly forming a strong attachment based on the profound relief and connection experienced in that brief but powerful exchange. It's a testament to how starved for genuine emotional connection many are that such a singular event can create such a significant bond.
The disturbing aspect here lies in the implication that such meaningful conversations are so infrequent in a man's life that one instance can create such a disproportionate emotional impact. It highlights the pervasive emotional isolation many men endure, where opportunities for deep, authentic sharing are rare commodities. This vulnerability makes them highly susceptible to forming rapid attachments with anyone who offers even a fleeting moment of true emotional understanding. While this can lead to beautiful connections, it also carries the risk of forming attachments based on an idealized projection rather than a fully developed understanding of the other person.
The power of a single, meaningful conversation for a man underscores his deep, often silent, yearning for genuine human connection and the profound impact of someone who can truly listen and understand beyond the surface. 24. Men often mistake emotional dependence for love. This psychological phenomenon is a subtle yet significant pitfall in male relationships, leading to dynamics that can be both perplexing and ultimately unfulfilling. For many men, particularly those who have struggled with emotional literacy, loneliness, or a lack of robust emotional support systems, the intense feelings associated with emotional dependence can be mistakenly interpreted as the profound, selfless affection of love. This confusion arises because the feelings of being needed, relied upon, and having a central role in someone else's emotional life can powerfully resonate with a man's ingrained desire to provide, protect, and be useful. The roots of this confusion lie in the male conditioning that ties self-worth to utility and the ability to solve problems. When a partner is emotionally dependent, relying heavily on him for emotional regulation, validation, or to fill a void in her own life, it can trigger a powerful sense of purpose and importance in the man. He feels needed, essential, and valuable. These feelings can be incredibly gratifying, fulfilling a deep-seated psychological hunger for significance. In the absence of a clear understanding of genuine emotional intimacy, which involves mutual vulnerability, respect, and independent selfhood, a man might interpret this feeling of being indispensable as the core essence of love. He might believe that because he feels so vital to her emotional well-being, and because he derives such a strong sense of purpose from that role, what he feels in return must be love. This dynamic can be particularly pronounced in men who have experienced emotional neglect or a lack of deep connection in their own lives. When someone finally leans on them so heavily, it can feel like a profound validation, a confirmation of their worth that they have long sought. The intensity of being needed can mimic the intensity of romantic passion, leading to a misattribution of feelings. He might become deeply invested in saving or fixing his dependent partner, and this active role-playing can feel like love, even if it's more akin to a caretaking function than a true partnership of equals. The disturbing consequences of this confusion are manifold. For the man, it can lead to relationships that are inherently imbalanced and ultimately draining. He might find himself constantly giving, constantly solving, and constantly bolstering his partner's emotional state, without receiving the reciprocal emotional support and independent partnership that defines true love. This can lead to resentment, burnout, and a profound sense of exhaustion, even as he believes he is in love. He might struggle to set boundaries, fearing that doing so would jeopardize the relationship and, by extension, his sense of purpose and worth. For the dependent partner, this dynamic can perpetuate her reliance, hindering her own emotional growth and autonomy. Ultimately, mistaking emotional dependence for love prevents the development of a truly healthy, equitable, and fulfilling relationship, highlighting how deeply ingrained male psychological needs can sometimes lead to a misinterpretation of one of life's most profound emotions. 25. Men get jealous more from emotional neglect than physical cheating. This final psychological fact offers a crucial insight into the core insecurities and emotional needs of men, challenging common assumptions about jealousy. While physical infidelity is undeniably painful and a significant breach of trust for anyone, for many men, the deepest and most intense jealousy is often triggered not by the act of physical cheating itself, but by the perceived or actual emotional neglect that precedes or accompanies it. This isn't to diminish the pain of physical betrayal, but rather to highlight that for men, the threat to their emotional connection, their sense of being valued, and their unique place in their partner's inner world can be far more devastating than the physical act alone. The reason for this lies in the profound male longing for emotional connection and understanding, which often goes unmet. As discussed, men struggle with emotional expression and often rely heavily on their romantic partner as their primary source of emotional intimacy. When a man perceives that his partner is emotionally connecting with someone else, sharing vulnerabilities, deep conversations, or intimate feelings that are typically reserved for him, it strikes at the heart of his most fundamental emotional needs. It suggests that he is not enough, that he is being replaced in the most critical aspect of the relationship, the emotional bond. This perceived emotional betrayal can feel like a profound rejection of his entire being, a declaration that he lacks the capacity to provide the emotional depth her partner seeks. Physical cheating, while hurtful, can sometimes be rationalized or compartmentalized as a momentary lapse, a physical act separate from the emotional core of the relationship. However, emotional neglect or betrayal suggests a deeper shift in affection and loyalty. It tells a man that his partner is finding the emotional intimacy he craves and often struggles to provide elsewhere. This can trigger intense feelings of inadequacy, shame, and a profound fear of abandonment. The thought that another person is understanding his silence, sharing her dreams, or offering the emotional support he believes is his unique role can be far more agonizing than the idea of a physical encounter. It challenges his identity as her emotional anchor and trusted confidant.
This dynamic is particularly disturbing because it highlights the often unspoken emotional hunger that many men carry. Their jealousy stems from a deep-seated fear of losing the emotional connection they value so highly, precisely because such connections are often scarce and hard-won in their lives. The threat of emotional neglect, of being emotionally replaced or deemed insufficient, can feel like a direct assault on their self-worth and their most fundamental need for intimacy. This vulnerability underscores the importance of fostering genuine emotional connection and communication in relationships, recognizing that for many men, the heart of their security lies not just in physical fidelity, but in the unwavering emotional presence and loyalty of their partner. The quiet fear of emotional abandonment often fuels a jealousy far more potent and destructive than any fear of physical transgression. We have journeyed through some of the most intricate and often disturbing psychological facets of male psychology, from the silent burden of emotional suppression to the profound impact of basic kindness, from the delayed devastation of heartbreak to the nuanced fears that drive commitment. It's clear that the male experience is far richer and more complex than societal stereotypes often allow. These insights reveal men as beings grappling with immense internal pressures, navigating a world that often demands strength and stoicism while simultaneously yearning for connection and understanding. Understanding these psychological realities is not about excusing harmful behaviors, but about fostering empathy, promoting healthier communication, and challenging the rigid norms that often leave men emotionally isolated and underserved. It's an invitation for men to explore their own inner worlds with greater courage, for partners to approach male emotional expression with greater patience and insight, and for society as a whole to create spaces where vulnerability is seen not as a weakness, but as a fundamental human strength. The journey into male psychology is a journey towards greater understanding, not just of men, but of the human condition itself.